Greetings YouTube, this is Brian Wasson with a special game video with the matchup here with Big Al Meacham, our first get together up in the Torch Bunker. We got a new setup here than what I'm usually used to playing. Got some interesting painted pieces with different roundels for various countries here, different colorings. Some cool accessories in terms of the turn markers here and the risk factories, things you've seen in grasshoppers and general hand grenades videos, but things I'm not used to playing with. It's going to be a lot of fun, a little bit different. And it's going to be interesting to see what strategies we employ here against people that have never played each other before. So here is the initial setup of the board. Looking forward to future turns. Here we are halfway through turn one, having just finished Japan's turn. And boy, it was a drubbing for the Allies, an inauspicious way for me to begin this game. Al's opening moves are by the book for him. I've read his spreadsheet actually that describes this opening move. He did it to the letter and everything worked out for him. So you'll see you got a Japanese destroyer down here, which is the move I borrowed from Al in my last game, and didn't work out for me, worked out great for him. Don't see any Anzac ships down there. Took the Philippines with nary a hit being returned by the Americans. We have Japanese roundels all over China, as they should be. Now, the one thing that I've done a little bit differently here in China is that I got aggressive early with Russia. So that's 2 Russian land units already in China as well. You can't really tell as well with the metal planes, but that's a Russian plane down there in Suiyang. So the Russians already taken an early aggressive posture, declaring war on Japan in order to pull that off on the first turn. But otherwise, the Pearl Harbor move worked out fantastically for him, as you would expect. And Japan's off to a mighty good start. Here in Europe, we have the same thing. So another little 50-50 move also worked out for Al up in Canada. So all those UK guys are gone. This naval attack for Germany worked out amazingly. The battleship is not only left, but a sub to go with it, together with the carrier and other naval units that he purchased. You see a whole mess of German planes in West Germany, as they should be, leaving the rest of France alone other than to take Paris. And Germany getting aggressive with the European neutrals too, gobbling those all up for himself. Now, there obviously isn't much on the Russian border yet, but certainly we'll see some action there shortly. How will the UK respond on the rest of turn one? Beginning of round 2, we've finished our first whole round of play, and it has been interesting. So, as you may have expected, the US came and took out the ships left over from the Pearl Harbor fleet. But as you may not have expected, because none of us saw this move until I was almost done making the US moves, the little airplane that could made it up to from Hawaii here. 1, 2, 3, 4, into Sea Zone 6, where Japan had built its transports and didn't have planes here because nobody realized that the plane could get there from Hawaii and land. But this carrier came 1, 2, 3. So we got 10, 9, 8, and 7 there to pick up that plane, so that it could take out those defenseless transports. Now, I mean, I ain't gonna lie, that felt a little bit like climbing the rope in gym class, but it is still very early in the game, and Japan is going bonkers on J1 as it is supposed to do. So there is still a lot of hurt left for Japan to bring, including with this fleet and this whole fleet here that just survived wholly intact from the Philippine invasion. Anne's actually barely pulling itself together from the Japanese ships that were left there. UK. So the UK has pursued more or less the general hand grenade Middle-earth strategy, at least for the first turn, by making sure to take Persia, take Somalia, kind of clean out the middle ground there. But UK made a error, so it killed some transports on one side and inadvertently left a transport on the board on the other side here. So after much hemming and hawing, I did end up doing the Taranto raid, and that went fairly well. The battleship was gone, and I was down to one plane, so I retreated, leaving a cruiser in the battle here in the Crete Sea Zone 99, bringing that back to 99, landing this bomber and plane here in Syria. What I didn't pause to realize is that the transport was still alive, and without getting rid of the Italian plane that was still there to defend it, I let that live. So unfortunately, that kind of, I mean, although we got rid of the battleship, the other half of the reason for doing Taranto is to get rid of that transport. So that kind of sucked. I ain't gonna lie on that one. So there's the two transports being used in southern France by Italy, and those two transports are now protected and alive and not making me happy. But we do have a little bit of a British Navy, both the cruiser from Sea Zone 91 and a little bit left over here from the Somali invasion. These folks over here retreating from what's left of London, actually picking up a French dude because, you know, why not? But we still have a lot to expect from Germany here, and I'll be interested to see which direction they take on turn 2. Halfway through turn 2, and we're starting to here in the middle of the board because that's where we keep track of turns on this particular print. I kind of like these metal tabs here, these little door handles is what they actually are, but they're really cool. They had some heft to these pieces here, so that's kind of a neat innovation. But we've just finished Japan's turn, and as I might have hoped, the way that turn 1 went and the subsequent buildup in Yunnan has really ended up stalling Japan's progress. Japan has taken turn 2 to reform the line and regroup a little bit. You'll see here, I don't know if it's obvious with these metal pieces, which again are cool because they really have some heft to them. They feel like substantial pieces, but I'm still a little bit confused on who's who. But for those watching at home, we have Chinese troops in plane, we have British troops in plane, and we have Russian troops in planes, all hanging out down here in Yunnan. And the Japanese horde that was in Kiangsi said, oh, wait a minute, I'm going to back up on that. Did some effective strat bombing on Calcutta. Again, for those keeping track at home, those greens represent 3, the reds 5, and the gray chips are 1. So that's 8 points of damage on the Calcutta factory inflicted by these bombers here. But we've got a substantial air force there still in Siam, and Japan spent all its money on 3 factories. So the lack of transports is not going to matter next turn. That is sure as heck, because there's a whole lot of production capacity now on the mainland. So yeah, we've got some allied troops. They're doing some cool stuff. But will they be able to hold off that level of production? Japan does not yet have their money islands, but they got 2 of them, and you can bet that the other 2 are coming next turn. In the Pacific side, though, we haven't yet taken the American turn, but the naval action is certainly stalled as well as Japan kind of regroups and reforms. Russia brought its infantry back down to the coast to pose a threat, project some force, while Germany has kind of done a similar regrouping, although it sure has a lot to work with. It has finished gobbling up these neutrals in Eastern Europe, sent its planes down to do some dirty work here, getting rid of the rest of the British Navy, that cruiser that was left there, gobbling up the rest of France, and buying, what was it, 7? Was it 7 transports he built this turn? 9. Oh, 9. My bad. 9 transports. All sitting right there. Gee, wonder where they're going to go. So we'll see what happens on the rest of turn 2. We've reached the beginning of turn 3 here at the Torch Bunker. And we'll swing to Europe this time. The U.S. has taken their modest fleet over to Sea Zone 91 and bolstered up Gibraltar there. Really because time is not on their side right now with the Germans headed towards Sea Lion, so everything's got to get going here presently. They've built up what they can as far as a fleet. We've got a transporter, a destroyer, but also 4 subs, anticipating some naval encounters here in the not too distant future. The European UK, after some deliberation, just built dudes, 10 dudes right there in London. You can't be messing around at this point with Middle East factories. Italy has had an impressive turn 2, kind of rebounding a bit. Has progressed modestly in Africa, taking steps and not overreaching itself. Building up now what is a fairly decent sized force in Alexandria, now bordering on Cairo. The remaining Italians have been cleaned out of southern Africa, so this northern Africa is the only encounter we have going on, and there's a little bit of backup here. The Brits did take Iraq, but there's a sizable force, and you'll notice here on turn 2 we have an Italian aircraft carrier because they saved up some money this time and got a bonus as well. So Italy is not doing badly. It's holding its own. As I mentioned, the Europeans took Iraq and then sent what they could towards India. In China, we've had a bit of a realignment here. So the foreigners in Yunnan are starting to peel off. The Chinese have built up there, decided to hold their ground rather than striking out against the Japanese. The Brits sliding back down into Calcutta, flying what they could in terms of planes back into Calcutta, so this time we'll have some interceptors if they bomb us again, bringing what Navy we can. In the meantime, Anzac doing what it can to get its bonus, which that reminds me, I didn't collect Anzac's income, I gotta do that, and with the bonuses that they are getting, managed to build their own little carrier. A modest fleet to be sure, but something. Now, what I'm also interested with the Americans is what they managed to do with their Navy. So this Japanese stall that we've seen in the Pacific has had consequences up here. There's nobody guarding Sea Zone 6. So we very carefully inserted a transport covered with plenty of air support, because now there are planes in Japan. They could have scrambled against this undefended transport right here. But we covered that. He chose not to scramble. Now, Korea belongs to the Americans. And there's an important country that takes a turn here before Japan gets to go. So we'll see how that all plays in a multinational way here on turn 3. And yes, those are some subs adding to the rest of the Pacific Fleet there with the Americans. All right, we're halfway through turn 3, and it is a grim one for the Allies. So Japan has completed its acquisition of the Money Islands, and in the process demonstrated that the Allies perhaps overreached. So with America holding Korea, Russia brought every single one of its dudes down there into Korea to hold it, with the thought that maybe if it held, America would build a factory there and have a presence on the mainland. And I knew that he could bring all his planes, and it would be a tight battle, but figured, hey, even if we lost, the odds show that it would be a close battle. Well, it was not a close battle. The AA guns did not hit at all. I don't think any of the Russians hit at all. Can't really tell by the number of planes that are left that they hit anything. But whatever advantage the Allies may have gained that first turn by slowing down the Japanese expansion seems to have been made up for now by the Allies having overreached a bit and now having no Russians in East Russia to defend the front. So that's not good. That's actually what they refer to as bad. So that's a setback for the Allies, to be certain. And that itself would be livable were it not for the fact that on the same turn, the Germans have managed to take London. Yep, that's a bad thing. Now, the British actually performed slightly better than one might have expected. Nevertheless, they're down to one tank and took out only a few air units before they ran out of steam. So now the Americans are positioned, honestly, they can take London back if they really need to, but the question is, should they? Germans just took a boatload of cash from the British, and we're going to see how the rest of the nations react to that shift in the balance of power here on the rest of turn 3. All right, as we reach the beginning of turn 4, unfortunately the Allies were really not able to accomplish a whole lot. They, for example, weren't able to hold on to Cairo. Italy came down in force on that one. Managed to finish out the rest of North Africa. Now the U.S. is piling up, I suppose you could say, in C-Zone 91 with a bit more yet to come, but choosing not to do anything with it yet this turn. UK made a strategic pull out of Cairo because calculated the odds the turn we couldn't win, but remains to be seen how much counter-strike ability it has. Cairo chose to build up in anticipation of this oncoming attack, while China did much the same, sticking to its power points there and waiting for the Japanese to come, while the Americans on this side of the board doubled back and again reinforced in Alaska, while the Anzacians build up their modest fleet bit by bit here, limited only by the fact that they can only build 3 things at this point. So what will everyone do with these assets on turn 4? We're halfway through turn 4, and this one has so far been a regrouping kind of turn. Germany made a couple little forays into Russia. Were taken back and then some by Russia, although honestly Russia's a turn behind in setting up so far this whole game. It really ought to have been closer to the German front to begin with. Just wasn't set up properly to respond to that sea line. And we opted not to take back Karelia, probably should have. But that's where things stand there, more or less status quo. Japan pushing forward inexorably into China and investing quite a few resources now into armor on the land, spending almost all of its assets up there, a couple ships, and poking out into eastern Russia, activating the Mongolian rule, not that anybody cares at this point, and just baiting a reaction from the U.S. here on turn 4. So, we begin turn 5 with things not looking significantly better for the Allies. The British took back Transjordan, could have taken Cairo, actually, odds were good on that, but would not have held it. So took Transjordan with minimal effort. They took it back, but we at least have a, somewhat respectable force still there in Iraq. Meanwhile, the Americans had taken Morocco. Italy sent one of their transports back to take that back. Americans have more on the way, not making any other big moves beyond that. Back this way, the Chinese spread out a little bit, reformed their own line, and the Indians down here consolidating their navies. Again, part of the conservative move over here was holding on to the transports and consolidating what ships we have, building another one, actually starting to build up some offensive units, built a tank here this time, on the assumption that the threat here is at least waning somewhat. Got a decent resistance there, and they went to Malaya instead of Cairo, so that gave us a little bit of breathing room, however long that lasts. Anzac continuing to build what is now, by any measure, a respectable navy. But will it be enough to turn the tide for the Allies here on turn 5? Halfway now through turn 5. The Axis show no sign of stopping, that is for certain. Big Al is making some cautious and smart maneuvers here with Japan, keeping the line solid, not overextending, and consistently beefing up the land units. We see more and more armor coming through, to the point now where he finally feels comfortable parking all his assets right next to my big stack of Chinese guys, which means they may not be long for this world. Eastern Siberia kind of filling in with Japanese flags, including a bit of Mongolia as well. I may be running out of flags at this point. Just check to see whether there's an income victory in global, and apparently there's not. This is victory city only kind of situation. In Europe, Germany has made its own big move here through all of its Navy and Air Force down into 91, which you'll see is now conspicuously absent of Americans. I guess I underestimated just how many planes he could throw at me. He last turn built up quite a few planes, and you'll remember made that big sacrifice play, even sacrificing a Strat bomber in order to get that Moroccan territory. Meaning he had this planned all along, and while putting up a halfway decent fight, there's still quite a few planes that lived. You'll see them all parked here in Africa. Now the Americans leave quite a few land units in Gibraltar, and of course can start the whole process over again in the Navy, but another setback for the Allies here on turn 5. Alright, so here near the end of turn 5, we are calling the game not voluntarily because time not being a factor. I would play this one out for a while yet. I clearly think that the Axis has the advantage here. I think we agree on that. But the fact is that we're out of time here at Torch Bunker because it's 4 something in the morning, and other folks are showing up here bright and early in the morning, and we're gonna have to start 2 new games. So that's where it's at. The Italians, once again, there's a fight here at the end of turn 5. The UK took Transjordan, Italians took it back again. This time they finally built a factory. Really, I mean, UK isn't going to be able to hold off Japan and Italy indefinitely on 14 IPCs a turn. So, you know, there's options for busting out. I didn't even do Anzac's turn here on turn 5. We were looking at maybe consolidating here, gobbling up some money islands with enough to hold it. With that navy being as weak as it is, not having any land units really left to transport in range. I intended maybe to join the U.S. and Anzac Navies over here. Yeah, there's a couple different combinations I could have made to prolong things, and something might have broke, but this is clearly an Axis advantage game. So, couple clear mistakes here. Over here in Korea, stuck it out a little too far and got the neck chopped off there, as well as the Navy over here in 91. It was safe for a while, but it didn't keep pace with the building that the Luftwaffe was doing, and so they were able to come down and stop the progress that the U.S. had been making. And with London out of the picture and not coming back, again, I mean, the U.S. had one or two opportunities to take it back, but it wouldn't have made any difference because with Germany hanging on to all those transports, means they're going to just be able to come hop right back and take it back again and collect another round of IPCs from London, which wouldn't have done anybody any favors. So, Al, you got any thoughts to add to the last video?
I thought it was a good game.
It was a solid game. It was fun, enjoyable little bonus game here that I didn't expect to be able to have this year. So, all good in the hood, and we'll fire this back up in the morning.